Hey everyone, I'm Meoang, and today we're going to learn how to use FL Studio. If you've purchased FL Studio, installed it, opened it up, saw this interface, and then felt totally confused and lost, then this tutorial is for you. If you're looking to buy a digital workstation to start making digital music, but you're not sure if FL Studio will fill your needs, then this tutorial is also for you. If you've been using FL Studio for a while, but still feel confused by it every now and then this tutorial is for you as well. This video will be going over the basics of FL Studio so that you have enough information to get started making your songs. The process will be covered in more detail in future videos where I demonstrate making a song from start to finish. Before I go on, I wanted to mention something I didn't notice until I finished the video, but whenever I open a right-click menu, it didn't come up on my recording software. See, I'm seeing menu here, but you don't see it. So just listen to what I say and it'll be easy to figure out what you should be looking at, what you should click on. In my experience, the best way to learn these things is to go over the interface visually, explain it piece by piece, and then demonstrate it at the end. So what we're going to do is start with this top bar here, and we'll talk about this sidebar, this header, and we'll make a song that demonstrates everything we've learned at the end. I'm going to skip a few of these buttons for now, but I'll go into them in future videos because I want to keep things a little introductory and basic. I think the best place to start would be right here. Obviously this is your play and stop button, but this button right here switches between song mode and pattern mode. Song mode will play the song in its entirety on the playlist here. So you see I click play, we can see it moving across the song. Now we don't have anything in the playlist yet, but it would be playing. Pattern mode is when the button is lit up and it plays the specific pattern we have selected right now. Right now it's pattern 1, you can see here. We open this is our pattern. You can see it playing right there. And we'll learn about these windows next. This button lets you start recording. You can choose whether you want to record it right into the playlist as an audio clip, if you want to edit it first, and so on. When the record button is lit up and selected and you hit play, it will start recording through whatever device you have plugged in, usually a microphone of some sort, over the playlist while you're playing the song. This will let you have a metronome on while it's recording, and this button turns on a countdown before the recording starts. These buttons right here we don't need to worry about too much, but this button, when you have it toggled on, will allow you to use the keyboard to play notes for your instruments, usually as a way to test the instrument to make sure the sound is what you like. And this will determine how the automatic snapping of the playlist works. For example, cell means when I put something on the playlist, it will snap to these cells here. See how I can't move in between the cells? It snaps to them. You usually want this on like this, unless you're making very specific changes. This is the timer for our playlist. You start playing, you can see this go up, and what this is actually doing, see it's not minutes and seconds right now. It's going over these 16 bars in the first section. So that's the first, we'll call it a section, and these are the bars. So there's 16 here, and it's counting them up. If you don't like that, you can click it, and it changes it to minutes and seconds. Now right here is something we'll be working with a lot, and this is our pattern selector. You can right-click it, and it gives you a list of the patterns you have created. We just have the first one now, and this gives you options for the currently selected pattern. So see if I click clone, now there's, oh. Well, there would be 2 if I filled them in. If you hold shift and click, it lets you name the pattern. So we'll call it test pattern. And it lets you assign a color to that pattern if you'd like. If you click this plus, you add a brand new pattern and you can name it. Call it test pattern 2. Now you see when I right click, I have these 2 patterns I've created to choose from. A pattern is basically one piece of your song. So for example, it could be a single drum beat, a bass line, a melody, whatever. You can put multiple instruments in the same pattern, but some people prefer to separate them so it's easier to see on the playlist. Now the bulk of this tutorial will be going over these buttons here. These buttons open the individual windows of the interface and allow you to use them and work on your song. So that'll make sense as we go over them, and we'll start right here at the beginning. This is our playlist button. You can see on the top left here, it tells you what you're hovering. This is view playlist. The playlist is actually this window we already have open. See if I click it, it closes and it opens. The playlist is where the pieces of your song, the patterns, are laid out. Here's a piece. And let's pretend this had music. And we hit play, and it would play these as a song. Now over here we have the tracks of the playlist. Each track is usually used for specific instruments or automations. For example, we have track 1, let's call this drums. Now it's drums, I would put my drums here. This one, bass, I put my bass here. To rearrange these tracks, you hold shift and use the scroll wheel. So I'm holding shift, I scroll up, bass goes up. I'm holding shift, I scroll down, bass goes down. To zoom in, you hold control and use the scroll wheel like that. If you hold down the scroll wheel, you can click and drag. If you hold control and left click, you can click and drag to select multiple patterns and move them at once. You can make a copy of the selected pattern. So I'm holding shift, I hold down click, and I move my mouse and it makes a copy. If I hold right click, it turns into a delete icon where I can delete patterns on the playlist. When you let go, you're not deleting anymore. I'll quickly go over some of these while we're here. Draw mode, instead of clicking and holding and making several at once, you'll make one and be able to move it at the same time. See? If I have paint mode on, if I click and hold, it will make several copies of the pattern as I drag. The other important one is this slice tool. So let's say you've got a drum beat, but you only want half of it to play for a certain section of the song. Use the slice tool, slice it in half, and now it's in 2 pieces. Now I can take off 1 half, and this first half will be untouched. And if I change my mind later, I just click and drag like that and fill it back in. This little magnet icon will let you change how snapping works. So for example, I click it, and you can't see this menu now, but I have main selected, which defaults to whatever I have here. So just for example, I'll select no snapping, and you can see it moves freely without snapping at all. Now, if you change your mind later, we'll go back to main, you'll see that it's still snapping, but since I moved it earlier, it's kind of out of place. So for patterns, you can just delete it and make a new one since you've already got them saved. But let's say you're not in a pattern and you need to fix it. You can use the slicing tool, cut it off at marks that you need, delete the extras, and then we're back. That's mostly used in the piano roll that we'll go over later, since in playlists you can just make a new one. It's worth mentioning right here is whatever current pattern you have selected, and that's the pattern that will get drawn. If you want, here, let's make test pattern 2 here, and test pattern 1 here. Now see, I have test pattern 1, it's making test pattern 1s. I go here and change it, now it's test pattern 2. If you want to select a pattern you already have on the playlist quicker, you just left click it, and it'll change up here, and now I'm drawing test pattern 1. The playlist is where you'll visually see your song all together with all of the patterns arranged how you want it. So just as an example, I'll show you a song I'm in the middle of working on right now, just so you can see a filled out playlist. Here are my tracks. Here are my patterns on the playlist as I want to play them. And here is the song. All of this will make more sense as we go through the other pieces, but for right now, just think of it as these are the patterns that are playing. If they're vertically aligned, they play at the same time. Now we'll go back to a blank project, and we'll go over the next button. This is your channel rack. The channels are each individual instrument, sample, automation, or whatever that is getting used in the song. For example, we're starting with just a sampler, and if we filled it with a sample over here, basic, a kick, click it, you can hear it. All these samples come with FL Studio, by the way, and I'm just going to use the default ones for this example. You put it into the sampler. Now this channel will play that sample. So over here we have steps. We fill in a button, it plays during that part. If it's blank, it doesn't play. So we'll fill in every 4th beat. And there's our channel. Now what we're actually editing here is pattern 1. So if we put pattern 1 on the playlist now, come in. Now, when we hit play, it will play our pattern. Now, a lot of your work will be done in this channel rack as well. So let's say I go to pattern, oh, I didn't have them here. We'll make a new pattern, pattern 2. This is a new thing. Then I go back to pattern 1, and it's what I had previously. Now, to add a new channel to the rack, you click this plus button, and you choose whatever instrument, sampler, whatever that you want to use. So for example, let's use something that comes with FL Studio called Citrus. And we'll go over this next. But now see, I have a second channel. Rename the channels, it's just like patterns, you hold shift, click. And now I changed it, hold shift, click. There we go. Over here is the mixer track that this channel is being routed to, and we'll go over that when we get to the mixer track. But for now, we'll just do 1 and 2. To change it, you click and hold and drag up or down. Just while I'm here, I'll show you the mixer. While you're doing this, you can visually see which mixer track you're going to. To the left of each channel are 2 knobs. This one is volume, this one is panning. For those of you who might not know, panning is how far to the left or right the sound is, and volume is how loud the sound is. If we right-click on one of these, or almost anything in FL Studio, we can create automation clips, and that's what I'll go over now. So I right-click here, I select Create Automation Clip. Now I've already named these 2 tracks in the playlist, but just to go over it again, you hold Shift, click, and you name it. You can choose the color while you're naming it. I like to change the automation clips to a different color so that they're visually different. Put simply, an automation clip will automatically turn these knobs while the song is playing. So, to edit them, you use these little points. Starts with one at the beginning and one at the end. If you move the one at the end, it shortens the clip. If you right-click, it will make a new point. And you can move those around like the other ones. Now just to demonstrate, I'll play it. The sound will start loud, get quiet, and get loud again. Now I'll open the channel so you can see the knob turning to get an understanding of how this is working. This is something you'll probably be using a lot, so try to familiarize yourself with it and feel comfortable. Next, we'll go over the virtual instruments in your channel rack, and I'll just use the ones that come with FL Studio to start basic, and we'll probably just use the one called Citrus. So if you click a channel, you open up the settings. This is our sample. There's our kick sample. Now if we click this one, it opens Citrus. Now this is a virtual synthesizer, and it's pretty complicated. We won't get too far into it now, but if you use these little arrows here, you can go over presets. If you right click it, and you won't see this window, but I will, it will open a complete list of all the presets. You click one, and there it is. So this is a bass synthesizer, and if I hit a key on the keyboard, you'll hear it. Okay. That will lead us to the piano roll. To open a piano roll for a particular instrument, you right click on the channel, so right click here, and select piano roll. Now, just to demonstrate, I'll put something on the piano roll, and if I go back to my playlist, it's gone, right? Now, if I try to right click and go to piano roll again, it's already selected. To go to the piano roll you already have open, you click the piano roll icon up here. And this is the piano roll. Now, for those of you who play piano, this will be pretty natural, but for those of you who don't, it might take some getting used to. These are the notes on the left. These are the name of the notes, these are your sharps and flats, and so on. If you click on the piano roll, it'll play the sound as you place it. The easiest way to think of a piano roll is a more visual and easily changeable way of writing out music. So we'll put, just to start simple, put 4 C4s right there. Now we switch back to pattern mode, because what we're doing is, see here in the pattern, we're editing the pattern now, and this will just play the pattern, and just to see. So when the marker goes over the note, it plays. So, make chords. That doesn't sound very good for this instrument, but for other instruments it would, because this is a bass synthesizer. Now, editing the piano roll is just like editing the playlist. We have the same buttons here. We have the same snapping, paint, and all that. Slicing, which you'll use a lot. And you can hold shift, make a copy of each note, and drag their length. And down here, you can change properties of the individual notes. For now, we'll just talk about the velocity that the note is hit. So if I lower this one, you'll hear the note get hit harder or get louder or quieter, so listen. Sometimes that's useful. If you hold Control, you can select multiple ones. If you're editing the properties down here and you hold Shift and click and drag, it matches them all so they're equal. Now this is how you make the actual notes of your song. Let's just do a very simple bass line. We'll go C, E, C, A. Now just listen. Now if we want to select them all and hold Shift, we make a copy of all of them, see? Now we'll move it up an octave just so it sounds a little more interesting. And listen. So that's the basics of using the piano roll. Getting more into it now is probably outside of the scope of this tutorial because that would get into music theory and songwriting, and that's something you'll learn in future videos or on your own. So now that we've made two different patterns, let's see them in action on the playlist. So this is pattern 2, this is pattern 1. So we'll add a new track called bass, and I'll move it up and get rid of this for now. So just for fun. So this is the bass pattern we just made. We'll switch back to song mode, and while we're here, let's name them. We'll call it bass 1 and kick. So now we'll be able to hear them together. Now you'll notice you couldn't really hear the kick, and that has to do with mixing, which we'll get into next. But for now, let's add another instrument. This one is called FL Keys. It's a very simple piano synthesizer. Here's FL Keys, and we'll keep it default for now, but just listen. Alright, now something important about the piano roll. Oh, I didn't mention this earlier. If you have your channels, if you have one selected, you can see it's selected because this green highlight. If you hold Alt, you can move them around. Okay, put you on track 3. Call it piano. Call this one bass. Now the thing about piano rolls that's important, let's click here to select it. Open the piano roll. Here, right click, piano roll, there it is. We highlight all of it, copy, Control C, and we'll go to our piano pattern, right click on the piano track, or channel, click piano roll, and this is the piano channel, the piano roll. There it is. Now, we copied from the other piano roll for the bass synthesizer, but we can still use it here, so listen. So to accent the bass line we made, let's just make some very simple piano chords, just to demonstrate the playlist a little more. I'm selecting them all, drag them all at the same time. I hold Shift, we'll go up, make some power chords. And I actually did that all wrong. Okay, so these are the root note and then the 5th note and the root note again. Notice that since I selected this last, when I make a new one, it will be the same type of note. So just to demonstrate, I'll shorten this, click it, click here, and see how they're the same length. To make it longer, click it. And now it's long again. So listen. So this is our piano pattern. We go back to the playlist, piano, move it to the top, and we will start playing it, but we only want to play it when the kick starts. What I'll do is just drag it down, and it's the same pattern, right? I click here, there it is, but it's not going to play the beginning. So even then, you can sort of hear the piano, but it's being overpowered by this loud bass synthesizer, and that will lead us to mixing. To open your mixer, you click the View Mixer button up here. We skipped over this one, so I'll go over it just now. But that just opens this left browser right here, opens it and closes it. I like to keep it open just in case I need to use it, but do what you like. Here's the mixer. Now, you'll remember in the channel rack, we routed these channels to individual mixer tracks. So, if we double click, we can see it, and name them just like everything else. Shift click and type kick, bass, and piano. Now while I'm doing this, let me fill these in so that everything is playing at once. And you will see these volume meters on each track of the mixer playing. Now for the basics of the mixer. These are the volume knobs of each channel. This is the panning of each channel, and you can use these to create automation clips if you'd like. This turns the channel on or off. And over here we have our plugins for each track of the mixer. So just for now, we'll lower the bass a lot. And you can hear the other instruments now, but it doesn't sound quite good yet. But we'll get to that. What I'm going to do first is replace that kick sample here with a little nicer sound. Here it is. I'm going to right click and go to replace. Now this lets you change the instrument you have selected, but you keep all of the notes throughout the entire project. So I'm going to change this to an instrument called bass drum. Now this is a virtual synthesizer for bass drums, so listen. That sounds a lot nicer. If we right click here, we can open the preset menu, go to factory, and choose from these presets. So listen. We'll use that one for now. We'll rename it back to kick and listen to it as a pattern. That sounds a little nicer. Let's see. Okay. Now let's mess with the panning a little. For some instruments, you'll want to pan them left or right to change the landscape of sound. A good way to think of that is imagine the viewer, the listener of the song, and then close to them are loud instruments, and far away from them are quiet instruments. To the left of them are instruments panned left, to the right of them are instruments panned right. So when you're making a song, try to visualize where the sounds are coming from, and try to make ways that they don't conflict too much. So for example, this piano sound, we could put, just for example, a little to the right, so it'll be louder in your right ear and quieter in your left ear, which means that this bass will be a little less obstructed. To demonstrate simple mixing a little more, I'm going to add a few more drum sounds, and this time we'll just use samples. So we'll go to packs, drums, hats. We'll find a closed hat sound. That sounds fine. Now, if we want to make a new channel of a sample, you can actually just click and drag. And there it is. So this is the closed hat sample we just found. So for a simple beat, we'll just play the closed hat in between the kicks. And we need to give this its own track as well. And we'll name that right now. Closed hat. Let's find a snare sound. That sounds okay. Call it snare. Move it up. And you can arrange these however you like, whatever works for you. We'll name this one snare. And we will play this every other kick. So this is the traditional drum beat you're probably used to. So, to keep it simple for now, let's just using the things we've learned so far, let's make this sound a little nicer. While you're in the mixer, it's just like channels. If you hold Alt and use the arrow keys, you can rearrange them. I like to keep all the drums together. So let's do kick, snare, closed hat. And this is something I like to do, is make a blank track of the mixer that's turned off, and it separates your instruments from your drums. So I'll just mess with these a little bit real quick and we'll see. That sounds kind of decent so far. Let's listen to the song. And those are the bare basics of mixing. Now I mentioned plugins for your mixer tracks earlier, and I'll go over some of the ones that you will use very frequently just to keep things simple. So we'll pick our track. We're picking kick, and you can see it moving here. Just a kick. And over here are slots for plugins. If you click a slot, it brings up a menu where you select a plugin. So the first one we'll select is called Fruity Parametric EQ2. And this is your basic equalization plugin. So for those of you who don't know what equalization is, I will mute the other instruments. So here's the kick. Now, when these lines light up, those are the frequencies of sound that are used up by the kick. And we can either decide to make them louder or quieter. Our goal here is to make sure that our instruments don't conflict with each other too much. So for example, a bass synthesizer and a bass drum will both play in relatively low frequencies, and we don't want them to cover each other up. So a very simple way of thinking about it is you raise one. So let's say for this kick, we'll click here and we'll raise it a little bit on the low frequency. See how the bass sound is a little louder now? And we'll take this guy and lower it just a little bit. Now, what we'll do on our bass synthesizer is the opposite. We'll raise it up a little bit here and lower it a little bit there. That way the two instruments don't conflict quite as much. And then we'll go to our bass, and we will mute the piano for now, just so we can hear it. And we'll do the same thing on the bass. So we click the bass track, slot 1, choose EQ2, and we can even have them side by side. If you just click a plugin you already have, it'll open it. So here is the kick, here's the bass. So like I said, we'll do the opposite. We'll bring the bass down a little bit on the really low frequencies and bring it up on the more bassy frequencies. Now this is a simple example, but you can kind of see how the two sounds, while similar in frequency, don't hide each other quite as much as they did before. Now the next plugin you'll use frequently, especially in digital music, is Reverb. Let me get these out of the way. I will unmute the instruments I had muted before, and we'll just go to this drum track. Now, we'll go to the snare drum, since it'll be the most obvious there. We'll go to slot 2 for now, because we're going to use slot 1 for equalization again. But we'll go to slot 2, and the plugin we're using is called Fruity Reverb 2. And again, this is a very basic way of doing reverb. Here are all your options, but for now we'll use the plugins, or the presets. And if you right click, you can see a list of them. One of them is called Drum Room, so that should sound nice. So let me turn it off so you can hear the snare sound. And when I turn it on, you can hear the reverb. Now this will naturally make the instrument a little louder, so let's bring it down. And it adds a little more realistic sound to the sample. We'll do the same thing on our other instruments real quick. Select Drum Room again. And we'll leave the kick alone for now, but on the piano, we'll add one as well, because that's an instrument we expect to reverberate a little bit. But instead of Drum Room, we will do Small Studio. Let's hear it all together. You can see this is a little quiet. And now, just to complete this example, I will add equalization for the other instrument. So here's piano. We'll do what we did before. Since it's not a very bassy sound, we'll take it down just a little on those bassy frequencies and bring it up where it's stronger. And we will finish up the other drums. Here's the snare. So we don't want it to collide with the piano because the snare sound, look, you'll see, kind of goes all over the place. So we'll just give it a little home right up here. And we'll do the same for the closed hat. Now in general, cymbals and hi-hats sit in the very high frequencies. So you can either decide to make that louder, or if it's annoying and not quite the effect you're going for, lower it. But we'll raise it up just a little bit. And we will add just a tiny bit of reverb to the bass, just to give it a little better quality of sound. Sorry about that. We'll choose Small Studio again just to be consistent. Now this isn't everything you need to know to mix, obviously, but this is a really good way to get started, to visualize the sound, to familiarize yourself with equalization and reverb, and to start building a solid foundation for the song. It sounds pretty decent right now. But it could sound better, and that's something we'll go over in our future videos. Now those three windows I went over, playlist, channels, mixer, and piano roll, will make up the bulk of your song making process. But let's go over these quickly. This is your project plugin picker. It's basically a more visual way to select your channels and patterns. Some people prefer this. I usually just select them from the menu and remember what they are. Likewise, this is a plugin manager. These are all the plugins we have installed. And again, it's just a more visual way of choosing them. And lastly, we have the tempo tapper. When you tap it, let's just do it now. It gives us the tempo that we just tapped, more or less. So you'll see we tapped 136, and right here is the tempo of our song in beats per minute. If you want to change it, you click and drag, and we'll stay at 140, which is the default. Now that's pretty much everything you need to know to get started, but I'll briefly go over this browser window here. Most of this don't worry about too much, but here's everything with your project, files you've recently used, all your plugins, all your plugin presets, all your channel presets, all your mixer presets. I don't really use presets, but some people really like them if they make a lot of songs that are very similar. Back up, and here's where your projects are. You right click it and click open. It'll open a Windows window, so you can change these folders however you like. Packs is where all your samples will be, and FL Studio comes with quite a bit of samples, and that should be enough to get you started, but eventually you want more. And again, you right click and click open, and it'll bring up a Windows menu, and that's where you'll place your new samples. With that last bit of information, you've got more or less everything you need to know to get started with FL Studio and start writing songs. Just to demonstrate what we've done, I'll keep everything open where you can see it, and we'll play the song we made. The next videos in this series will be going over making a song cover from beginning to end, the entire process. So if you're watching this and you're kind of following and you get it, but you want to see it in action a little more, stay tuned for those videos. And that's pretty much the end of this video. I normally don't like to do this, but I'm trying to keep my YouTube partnership by getting 1,000 subscribers. So if you liked this and you want to see the other videos in this series, consider subscribing. I'm also going to be making a playlist of this series, so when it's further along, you can just see them all at once, and that will be linked at the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope it helped.